A Missouri mother walked into a police station and calmly told the clerk that she killed her 2 young children. A case so disturbing, which is now, more than a year later, ended in a stunning legal twist. We are going to break down the chilling details with a forensic psychiatrist who offers insight into how a mental health crisis can erupt without warning and lead to the unimaginable. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. This is a case that we not only have talked about before, but it is one that has haunted Jefferson County, Missouri for more than a year. It began on just an unassuming morning in late May 2024, a morning that would just shake even the most hardened investigators to their core. And that is when police say 38-year-old Ashley Parmeley, a mother of 2, walked into the Festus police station and told the front desk clerk that she had killed her 2 children. 9-year-old Scarlett Parmeley Daugherty and her 2-year-old son, Isaac Baum. Now, again, we first brought you this story on Sidebar when it broke in May of last year. But this week, in a Jefferson County courtroom, it reached its conclusion, and it was dramatic. Now, if you haven't been following every turn of this case, I'm going to rewind for a second. So according to police, on May 28, 2024, Parmeley drove her Mazda SUV into the parking lot of the Festus police station in Missouri. She parked, she stepped inside and calmly told the clerk that she had killed her children. Jefferson County Sheriff Dave Marshak joined us on our initial episode back on May 31st, 2024, offering just what are absolutely chilling details about that morning and the horrifying words Parmeley spoke. Take a listen.
Well, obviously, how the case unfolded was disturbing from the onset. I think for the officers who continued to investigate, they continue to be surprised at some of the evil that they're witnessing. And of course, our seasoned investigators, they deal with a lot of violence, but at the same time, this was particularly disturbing for our people and continues. They're very passionate about this investigation and getting to the bottom of it.
Can you talk to us about how she showed up to the station and what she said?
Well, when she arrived Tuesday morning, she parked in the parking lot in her vehicle, casually walked in and approached the clerk. She was a little disheveled and some of her clothes were wet. But other than that, according to the video, when you look in it, just like a normal person walking into a business.
And what did she say?
Well, she approached the clerk first and shared that she had killed her 2 children. The clerk immediately ran back to where a detective and another police supervisor were sitting and told them, that this person just walked into the lobby and claimed this. Now, from law enforcement circles, I don't want to say it's not uncommon, but, because we deal with so many people with mental health issues, it's not extremely out of the ordinary to have somebody come into your law enforcement lobby who has a mental health issue or mental health crisis. So I think there was probably some disbelief and questioning at first, but the officers, multiple officers, quickly exited, including a detective, and ran out there to talk to her and interview her to see what was going on.
Did she give any indication about why she did this?
No, and, it's too early to talk about some of those things. Everybody always wants to know the motive. How could this be? Why would this person do these things? And we're careful not to speculate on that. And of course, we don't want to disrupt anything that the prosecutor may want to use later. And so we're cautious about that. I will share with you that during the course of that interview and with multiple officers, she did share that the daughter that she had shot was in the vehicle. And so one of the officers ran out to the vehicle to investigate, look in the vehicle, and saw the small child that had been shot, immediately unlocked the doors and was able to remove the child, into the parking lot and then start CPR, while the other officer, who happened to be a detective, started, making inquiries in terms of where the other child was. And that's how, other law enforcement agencies, including ours, received the information to immediately and urgently respond to that location to start investigating.
It's so chilling. It's so cold. It's so disturbing on a number of different levels. And Scarlett, this little girl, was found in the trunk of Parmeley's Mazda, dead from a gunshot wound. And then came the second blow. Sheriff's deputies acting on Parmeley's information discovered 2-year-old Isaac's body submerged in a decorative fountain at Timberlake Creek Resort. This is south of Olympian Village. A deputy dove in, pulled him out. It was already too late. Not to take away from this story in any way, but I know you guys might be true crime fans, but is anyone also in a business of some kind? If so, let me ask you something. How much time do you think your business team is just spending in spreadsheets, chasing down receipts, trying to make sense of endless rows of bank statements? Probably too much. Well, that is where Odoo Accounting steps in. So Odoo gives users a clean, modern accounting dashboard that shows you exactly what you need. Your bank balances, your cash flow, your vendor bills, your customer invoices, all in one place. It's intuitive, it's easy to navigate, and for anyone managing their business accounting, it's invaluable. You want to know why Odoo is going to give your business a cutting edge? Well, Odoo uses smart AI with a 98% recognition rate to automatically generate invoices and vendor bills. So all you have to do is just review and validate. That's it. Their bank reconciliation is next level. Odoo connects with over 28,000 banks to automatically match your transactions with your financial records to give you pinpoint accuracy. So there's no more guesswork. You need reports? Odoo's got everything from your balance sheet to your cash flow statements, professionally formatted, instantly accessible. So I got to say, if you've been doing all of this accounting work yourself, you can stop right now. Automate invoices, vendor bills, accounting workflow with Odoo today. Get a free 15-day trial today at odoo.com/sidebar accounting. According to People Magazine's review of the probable cause statement, Parmeley told investigators she had pulled over in this county and shot Scarlett. And before that, she said she had tried to sacrifice Isaac, though exactly what she meant was kind of unclear, but she claimed that after shooting Scarlett, Isaac started crying. She drove until she reached the resort, held her son underwater in the fountain for 4 to 5 minutes. That is what we're talking about. And now we have to talk about the next stage of this legal case. You might be guessing where we're going with this. So to help me break down what we're hearing, I want to bring on a special guest, forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Daniel Bober. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on. This is a horrible case. Based on the details, and obviously you haven't had an opportunity to review this firsthand, however, what mental health conditions, what are you considering? What might be relevant in understanding Parmeley's actions? Because obviously this is not the first time you have a mother who is accused of killing their children.
Yeah, this eerily reminds me of the Andrea Yates case, the woman in Texas who drowned her children. But this is a case of filicide, a mother killing her children. And there is a variety of reasons that this happens. And one of the most common reasons is something called altruistic filicide, meaning that mom feels that the kids would be better off without her. And this can be seen in people who are suffering from extreme depression, hopelessness, and despair. But in the case of Andrea Yates, she was suffering from postpartum psychosis. So the question is, was Parmeley under some influence of a delusion? Was she suffering hallucinations? Was she paranoid? There are so many reasons that this can happen, but clearly this is someone who is extremely mentally ill when this occurred.
Yeah, how do you judge between premeditated versus impulsive?
So are there efforts to conceal the crime? Is there consciousness of guilt? In this particular case, it seems like, she was pretty methodical about it. It didn't all happen in one scene. This happened in 2 different locations, so it seems like there was some time for her to process what was going on. And the fact that she went to the police station to essentially confess to what she did. So you would look at things like that.
When you hear this notion of sacrifice, it's one thing to talk about in any kind of context, but children sacrifice, how does that factor into potential psychosis, delusions, symbolic thinking in cases like this?
So in the case of Andrea Yates, interestingly enough, Andrea Yates said that she killed her children to prevent them from going to hell, from being sent to hell. So essentially, she was, in her mind, doing something that she believed was beneficial to the children, saving their souls, if you will, and killing them for that reason. So it was a killing that happened for a delusional reason under the influence of psychosis.
By the way, I don't even know how to even say this, but are there warning signs in a parent's behavior that might indicate that their children are at harm. I'm not talking about abuse cases where there's obviously signs on the children and CPS is called. I'm talking about something like this. This is next level. Is there any time someone should be on the lookout for warning signs, red flags?
So there's some obvious things, Did she have a history of mental illness? Was she under the care of a psychiatrist? Was she supposed to be taking medication that she wasn't taking? Was this something that spontaneously arose out of nowhere, or was there a long-standing history of mental illness? My guess is that there was probably something leading up to this, and it would have been apparent, or it should have been apparent to the people that were closest to her and that spent the most time with her. Now, of course, when people isolate themselves and they're not near their social support network, very often, we don't see this coming because there's no one that's watching. So the question is, who were the people that were closest to her, that were spending time with her? And was there any prior history of this before this occurred?
Does the calm way that she reported this crime, just casually strolling into the police station, does that give you insight into her psychological state at all?
Not solely by itself, but I think when you see someone who very calmly confesses that, normally you would think that's something that's pretty horrifying. So the mood of the person when they're confessing, it seems to be incongruent with the act itself. So that, taken with the totality of everything else, would fit with someone who was mentally ill when this happened.
Now, there had been concerns about Ashley Parmeley's mental health. And as it turns out, there was a chilling sign that something was very wrong. It appeared just before the murders, hours before these killings. According to First Alert 4, in the hours leading up to her children's deaths, Parmeley quietly changed her Facebook profile picture to a solid black screen. And it wasn't the first time her social media hinted at inner struggles, because the outlet reports that back in 2020, Parmeley had posted openly about her battle with depression. The post reviewed said, "I isolated myself. I came off as very timid and unfriendly, and in all reality, I needed a friend more than anything. Always questioning if the kids would be happier or better off without me being their primary caregiver, because I knew that they deserved a much better role model." Dr. Bober, how does that factor into the analysis? You have a sudden change to a black profile picture, discussions about struggles on social media. What do you take away from that?
So I think it's like what I said: extreme despair, hopelessness, feeling unfit, feeling unable to handle these kids, feeling that they deserved more. And this goes into what I said about altruism. In other words, I'm going to take these kids out because they deserve a better life, a life without me, because this is clearly something I'm not up to the task for, and I'm not going to be able to give them the life that they deserve, so they're better off not here.
Why post it on social media? Is it a cry for help?
I think it is a cry for help. And I think this happens a lot with people who suffer from depression. And unfortunately, in this generation, we're so focused on what's going on our phones. Sometimes we're not looking around at the people that are suffering. And these things fall by the wayside. They slip through the cracks. And I think this was a cry for help. I think she was searching, looking desperate for anyone that would maybe make contact with her and try to figure out how they could help her.
So Parmeley was initially charged with 1 count of first-degree murder for Scarlett's death and 1 count of second-degree murder for Isaac's. But then WHSV reported that prosecutors upgraded that charge to first-degree murder. So now Ashley Parmeley was staring down 2 counts of murder plus 1 count of armed criminal action. And if she was convicted, the stakes couldn't have been higher. We're talking death or life in prison without the possibility of parole for each murder charge. And the weapons charge, that's an additional 3 to 15 years behind bars. But in February 2025, so several months ago, KSDK reported a major shift. Parmeley's attorney, Patrick Osterman, announced that she would plead not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. We're talking about insanity. So that set in motion a long and meticulous process under Missouri law. The court ordered a mental health evaluation, not by state employees, but by independent forensic examiners. And what did they find? At the time of the killings, Parmeley could not understand the wrongfulness of her actions. The Missouri Department of Mental Health was then brought in for a second opinion, and they came to the exact same conclusion. And that leads us to yesterday morning, August 13th. After more than a year of investigation, grief, court battles, Ashley Parmeley stood before the judge, entered her plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, and was ordered committed to the Department of Mental Health. There is no set term, there is no release date. Her attorney called the case an unimaginable tragedy released a statement saying it is very difficult for many to believe that a sudden mental health crisis could affect such a loving, caring mother in this way, seemingly out of nowhere, but that is exactly what happened. There is complete consensus that at the time of this incident, Ashley was responding to delusions and hallucinations that caused her to believe that what she was doing was protecting and saving her beloved children. It was never her intention to hurt them. The medication Ashley now takes provides her with a great deal of clarity, but that clarity means that Ashley will have to live the rest of her life knowing what happened and feeling responsible, despite multiple doctors agreeing that this was not her fault. There can be no silver lining in a situation like this. We can only hope that in the future, there will be greater community recognition regarding the realities of mental illness. While many more services are still needed, there are now more community-based resources for mental health support than ever before. Okay, Dr. Bober, a lot to get into here. What is your takeaway from that conclusion from two separate sets of mental health professionals?
In the state of Missouri, they use what's called the McGeough standard. And it basically says that if someone is suffering from a mental disease or defect and they're incapable of knowing and appreciating the nature, quality, or wrongfulness of their conduct, that they may be found not criminally responsible. When someone is found not criminally responsible, they are committed to the Department of Mental Health, as you said, for an indefinite period of time. And they will stay there until it is deemed that they are both not mentally ill and no longer dangerous. So I think this was the right outcome in this case. Now, a lot of people are uncomfortable with this. This is something that people have been talking about for decades, especially since the attempted assassination of President Reagan, where a lot of these laws were changed. But they are rarely used and even less rarely granted. But I think in this case, the right thing happened.
Let's be clear about something. Someone could go into a certain state where they're having this manic episode, they can't appreciate the wrongfulness of their actions, and then they can come out of it. How quickly can that trigger? How quickly can you come off of it? How does that happen exactly? Because as you heard, her attorney says there's a misunderstanding about mental illness, about how you can be in that state for a limited period of time. Talk to us about that.
So not everyone who is mentally ill at the time they committed a crime is not deemed criminally responsible. For example, competency is a present skill. Is the person competent to proceed now? Do they understand the charges against them? Can they work with their attorney? Whereas criminal responsibility, we look at their state of mind at the time of the crime. So how do we know what that was? We talk to the people that they came into contact with. We look at their mental health records. Any previous or recent mental health contacts, were they taking their medication? Were there signs, social media posts, for example, that showed their state of mind at the time? So that's how we evaluate what their state of mind was during the time of the offense. And that is how we come to this conclusion.
And what will the subject remember of that episode typically?
Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they will have no recall. Sometimes under the influence of a delusion or hallucinations, and I've seen this in my own patients who have been hospitalized, they will have no recall of the event. It really depends on the person and the type of mental illness that they're suffering from.
What's the examination like? How do they determine whether or not somebody was insane at that moment in time? How do they really do it? What are the questions they ask? What are the factors they look at?
So they'll receive a full psychiatric evaluation, a number of interviews. We'll look at medical problems in their past. For example, is there evidence of a brain injury? Is there evidence of seizures? Is there a tumor? We'll look at their laboratory studies, blood, liver, kidneys, thyroid, all these things. We want to rule out anything medical. And then, of course, we will interview them several times and go through a comprehensive evaluation where we'll ask them questions about their childhood, about their past psychiatric history, about their social history, any prior treatment, have they been taking medication? All these things factor into it.
And what is the treatment plan now for her? And could she ever be released?
She could be released, and most likely she's receiving psychiatric medication and therapy. And again, there could be a time where she is released, but the burden of proof will be on her and the Department of Mental Health to show the court why, again, she is no longer mentally ill and no longer dangerous for her to be released.
Now, there is one more piece to this story, a legal battle that unfolded alongside the criminal case. So Scarlett's father, Jason Doherty, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Ashley Parmeley on November 5th, 2024, seeking $33 million in damages. Doherty is Scarlett's father, he's not Isaac's, but court records indicate that the two were locked in a 6-year-long custody battle from about 2015 all the way until 2021. Doherty's wrongful death petition reads, quote, on May 28th, 2024, defendant murdered the decedent in St. Francois County, Missouri, by shooting the defendant with a firearm. Defendant is charged with murdering decedent. Decedent's death was caused by defendant's actions. It was defendant's intentional, criminal, and illegal conduct that caused the death of decedent. As a direct and proximate cause of defendant's actions, plaintiff has suffered and will continue to suffer damages, including but not limited to funeral expenses and the reasonable value of the services, consortium, companionship, comfort, instruction, guidance, counsel, training, and support, and lost wages. Wherefore, plaintiff prays this court enters judgment in his favor and against defendant for a reasonable sum of money damages in excess of $3 million for his costs in pursuing this action, for interest as allowed by law, and for such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. So when Doherty filed the lawsuit, there were court records that showed Parmeley had until December 5th to respond. Now, she didn't. Now, the very next day, December 6th, Doherty filed for a default judgment. And by December 30th, the judge granted it. Basically, when somebody doesn't respond, they lose automatically. So by December 30th, the judge granted it, awarding him the full $3 million settlement. So, Dr. Bober, if we're talking about a diagnosis of insanity or a legal conclusion of insanity in a criminal context, typically, how do you see that play out in the civil arena? Because you and I both know that when it comes to the death of someone, many times you have the criminal case and then you will have the civil case.
Well, you know, I think about the O.J. Simpson case, right? He was found not guilty in the criminal case, but was found responsible in the civil case. So this is a similar situation. But I think if you're Parmeley, the last thing you're thinking about right now is the judgment on this civil case, because she's probably going to be confined to the Department of Mental Health for years. So I don't even know that he'll have any realistic chance of collecting on that judgment. I don't know what her financial situation is, but I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the implications. Obviously, in civil court, the standard is by a preponderance of the evidence. But so I don't really understand or know the implications of that from her defending herself in a civil suit.
Let me ask you this. Do mental health professionals generally testify in a wrongful death case? Has it happened? Have you done it before?
Yes, they can. For example, if you're suing for post-traumatic stress disorder, yes, mental health professionals can testify.
Okay. By the way, just talking about the surviving parent, right? The one who is now left to grapple with the loss of their child from a death that was caused, this child was killed by their wife, their girlfriend, their husband, their boyfriend, whatever it may be. My gosh, what is that journey like for that person?
Oh, I think it's a lifetime of unimaginable suffering. Things will never return to normal. There will be a new normal. There will be a constant reminder that this happened. You know, every birthday, every anniversary, all these things that they'll have to deal with for the rest of their life. It's just a horrible loss. And it's even worse. It's even compounded by the fact that it happened in such a horrific manner.
According to his obituary in the Leader News, Isaac was a fun-loving boy who loved playing in water, especially at the creek or in the shower. He also enjoyed playing with his cars, throwing stuff, picking up any stick he could find, and running around in his diaper. And then there's his big sister, Scarlett, who had a sparkle all her own. Her teacher, Abby Tinnen, shared in a Facebook post she could carry on a conversation with just about anyone. At the end of the year, the award I chose for her was the Squirrel Award because of her ability to gather people up who needed a friend and make them feel included. So 2 lives full of joy, connection, promise, now frozen in memory. Dr. Daniel Bober, thank you so much for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse.
Hey guys, real quick little programming alert. I want to let you know that actually tonight on News Nation at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be hosting Cuomo. I hope you can tune in. We might actually take calls from viewers, so if you have questions about the true crime cases that we're covering here on Sidebar, would love to talk to you about it. But again, tune in tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll be hosting Cuomo. See you then on News Nation. And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.